Imagine waking up tomorrow to discover that every book of profound wisdom, every philosophical treatise, every spiritual text, every scientific breakthrough that changed human understanding had vanished overnight, gone, erased from existence. Now imagine that in their place, the world's screens are flooded with an infinite stream of shallow entertainment, viral controversies, and emotional provocations designed to keep you scrolling, reacting, never thinking. Here's the disturbing part. Would most people even notice the difference? In this video, we will dive deep into the heart of that paradox. We'll explore why wisdom doesn't go viral, why ignorance dominates the world, and most importantly, how you can rise above that current, becoming one of the few who see clearly while others are blinded by noise. Stay until the end, because the final revelation will show you something powerful. The hidden psychological mechanism that has kept humanity trapped in a loop of superficiality for centuries. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to this channel, leave a like, and share this video with those who still value depth over distraction. Your engagement helps us spread ideas that truly matter, ideas that awaken, inspire, and challenge the ordinary. Because what you'll discover today might change the way you understand the world and your place in it. We live in the most paradoxical moment in human history. Never before has information been so accessible. The entire repository of human knowledge sits in your pocket, a few swipes away. Ancient wisdom from Lao Tzu, revolutionary insights from Einstein, psychological breakthroughs from Jung, all available instantly, freely, universally. And yet, what dominates? Our collective attention. What shapes the conversations, beliefs, and emotional states of billions? A 15-second dance video, a celebrity scandal, a political outrage engineered to trigger your amygdala, a conspiracy theory that feels more compelling than verified truth. Something has gone catastrophically wrong with the human attention economy. We've built the most sophisticated information distribution system in history, and we've used it to spread the intellectual equivalent of junk food, cheap, addictive, and ultimately poisonous. While wisdom languishes in silence, ignorance achieves viral immortality. While truth struggles to find an audience, lies circle the globe before breakfast. But why? Why does a philosophical insight that could transform someone's entire existence get 7 likes, while a video of someone pretending to be shocked gets 7 million views? Why do books that could heal civilizational wounds gather dust, while rage-bait headlines shatter communities? Why does the profound feel boring, the trivial feel urgent, and the transformative feel irrelevant? You might think it's simply because people are stupid, that humanity has always been this way, blind, reactive, sheep following whatever noise is loudest. But that's not quite right. That's the comfortable answer, the one that lets you feel superior while changing nothing. The truth is far more unsettling. The truth is that your own mind, yes, yours is wired to prefer ignorance over wisdom. Not because you're weak or foolish, but because wisdom is genuinely dangerous. It threatens everything you've built your identity upon. It dismantles the comfortable narratives you use to navigate reality. It asks you to die psychologically so something truer can be born in your place. Ignorance, by contrast, feels like home. It validates. It soothes. It tells you that you already know enough, that your tribe is right and the others are wrong, that complexity is just elitism and certainty is strength. Ignorance gives you enemies to hate and allies to comfort you. It provides meaning without the cost of transformation. So the question isn't really why ignorance goes viral. The question is, why would wisdom ever stand a chance? Think about the last time a piece of content genuinely changed your worldview. Not entertained you, not confirmed what you already believed, not made you feel good about yourself. Actually changed you, forced you to see something you'd been blind to, challenged an assumption you didn't even know you were making, revealed a truth that made you uncomfortable before it made you free. When was that? Can you even remember? Now think about the last time you watched something that made you angry, afraid, or righteously indignant. Something that got your heart racing, your thoughts spinning, your fingers typing furious responses. Something that felt urgent, important, undeniably real in the moment. Was that today, this hour, 5 minutes ago? This is the great paradox of our age. We have infinite access to wisdom and zero appetite for it. We claim to seek truth while actively avoiding anything that might actually deliver it. We say we want depth while spending our days swimming in the shallows, mistaking the churning surface waves for the ocean's true power. And beneath it all lurks a question that most people never allow themselves to ask. What if I'm part of the problem? What if my own psychology, my own choices, my own relationship with information is exactly what allows ignorance to rule? What if wisdom doesn't go viral because people like me, people who claim to value truth, are secretly terrified of what it would cost us to truly embrace it? The answer to why ignorance dominates the world doesn't live in abstract systems or distant institutions. It lives in you, in the architecture of your attention, in the stories you tell yourself about who you are, in the uncomfortable truths you scroll past because you're not quite ready to face them. And once you understand this, truly understand it, nothing will look the same again. To understand why your mind resists wisdom, you must first recognize a brutal truth. Your brain was never designed to seek truth. It was designed to keep you alive. And in the ancient world where your neural architecture was forged, survival and truth were not the same thing. When your ancestors heard rustling in the grass, the ones who paused to contemplate whether it was wind or predator, those philosophical proto-humans who demanded evidence before reacting, they died. The ones who assumed danger, who jumped first and analyzed later, who chose the comforting certainty of fear over the paralyzing burden of uncertainty, they survived. They became your ancestors. You carry their nervous system. This is the original sin of human consciousness. We are the descendants of the paranoid, the reactive, the quick to believe. Our cognitive architecture privileges speed over accuracy, emotion over analysis, tribal certainty over lonely truth. As the psychologist Daniel Kahneman revealed, our minds operate on two systems, one fast and intuitive, the other slow and deliberate. And in the competition for your attention, the fast system wins almost every time. Wisdom belongs to the slow system. It requires you to pause, to question, to tolerate the discomfort of not knowing. But ignorance hijacks the fast system. It offers immediate clarity, instant belonging, emotional satisfaction. It tells you exactly who to blame, what to fear, and why you're right. No waiting required. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this when he wrote that people don't want truth, they want certainty. They want the feeling of truth, the social benefits of appearing informed, the psychological comfort of having enemies and allies clearly defined. Actual truth? That's terrifying. Because real truth often reveals that your enemies are more complex than you thought, that your allies are sometimes wrong, that you yourself have been complicit in systems you claim to oppose. This is why philosopher Søren Kierkegaard declared that the crowd is untruth. He wasn't being elitist. He was observing a psychological reality. When people think collectively, they regress to the lowest common denominator of understanding. Nuance dies. Complexity becomes inconvenient. The mob doesn't want wisdom, it wants validation, and it will destroy anyone who threatens that comfort. You see this pattern everywhere now. Someone shares a nuanced perspective on a controversial topic, one that acknowledges multiple truths, that refuses to demonize or sanctify either side, and they're immediately attacked by both camps. If you're not with us, you're against us. The crowd cannot tolerate the wise person because the wise person reveals that the crowd itself is the problem. Carl Jung spent his life exploring why humans prefer comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. He discovered that the psyche constructs elaborate defense mechanisms, denial, projection, rationalization, specifically to protect us from truths that would force us to change. We don't just ignore wisdom, we actively fortify ourselves against it. We build psychological walls, surround ourselves with people who think like us, consume media that confirms our biases, and call this self-imposed blindness being informed. This is the hidden architecture of ignorance. It's not passive. It's not simply the absence of knowledge. It's an active defense system, constantly working to keep you comfortable, certain, and unchanged. Your mind treats transformative wisdom the way your immune system treats a virus as an invader, to be neutralized. And here's where it gets darker. The modern world has learned to weaponize this tendency. Every algorithm, every news headline, every viral post is engineered to exploit your fast-thinking system. They're not asking, "Is this true?" They're asking, Will this trigger an emotional reaction strong enough to make you click, share, comment, and come back for more? Arthur Schopenhauer observed that truth goes through 3 stages. First, it's ridiculed, then violently opposed, then accepted as self-evident. But he was writing in an era where ideas still had time to mature, to be debated, to eventually win through sustained argument. In the age of the algorithm, most truths never make it past the ridicule phase. They're drowned in the noise before they can even be heard. Consider what happens when you encounter a genuinely wise insight, something that challenges your worldview, that asks you to reconsider a fundamental assumption. Your first reaction isn't curiosity, it's defensiveness. But what about, that's oversimplified. The person saying this probably has an agenda. You don't realize it, but you're already at war with the truth before you've even considered it. Your psychological immune system has activated. And in that moment, ignorance feels like intelligence. Resistance feels like critical thinking. Dismissal feels like wisdom. This is the great trap. The mechanisms that were supposed to protect you have become the prison that keeps you blind. And the tragedy is that you can't see the bars because they're made of your own thoughts, your own reactions, your own need to be right rather than true. But the psychological trap is only the beginning. Because while your mind builds walls against wisdom, the world builds systems that profit from your blindness. And these systems have become so sophisticated, so invisible, that most people defend them even as they're being devoured by them. Look around at what captures collective attention. Notice what trends, what goes viral, what dominates the conversations of millions. Is it the nuanced analysis of complex social issues? The careful examination of scientific findings? The philosophical exploration of what makes a life meaningful? No. It's outrage, scandal, tribalism, the endless performance of emotion without transformation. This isn't accidental. Every major platform, every social media network, every news organization, every entertainment conglomerate has discovered the most profitable truth in human history. Attention is the new oil, and emotion is the drill that extracts it. The more heightened your emotional state, the more valuable you become. Anger keeps you scrolling. Fear keeps you clicking. Righteousness keeps you sharing. Wisdom makes you pause, reflect, and ultimately, leave. The algorithms that govern your information diet don't ask, will this make the user wiser? They ask, will this keep the user engaged? And those are radically different questions with radically different answers. A wise person is a terrible consumer. They think before they buy. They question narratives. They can't be easily manipulated. But an emotionally activated person? They're predictable, controllable, profitable. This is what media theorist Neil Postman warned about. We're not living in Orwell's 1984, where truth is suppressed by force. We're living in Huxley's Brave New World, where truth is drowned in a sea of irrelevance. You're not forbidden from accessing wisdom, you're simply too distracted to care. The cage isn't locked, you just never think to try the door. Consider the architecture of your daily information consumption. How much of what you absorb is designed to make you think versus designed to make you react? How many of the ideas entering your consciousness actually transform you versus simply confirming what you already believe? You're surrounded by noise masquerading as signal, by performance masquerading as authenticity, by opinion masquerading as insight. And here's the most insidious part. This system teaches you to mock the very things that could free you. Depth becomes pretentious. Complexity becomes overthinking. Wisdom becomes elitism. Meanwhile, shallow certainty is celebrated as authenticity, and ignorance is rebranded as common sense. The values have been completely inverted, and most people never notice because everyone around them is celebrating the same inversion. Yuval Noah Harari observed that in the age of information, the most powerful entities are those who understand human psychology better than humans understand themselves. They know your fears before you articulate them. They can predict your desires before you feel them. They feed you content so precisely calibrated to your emotional vulnerabilities that it feels like it's speaking directly to your soul when really, it's just exploiting the patterns in your data. This creates what philosopher Herbert Marcuse called repressive tolerance, a system that allows you to speak, to debate, to feel free, but only within boundaries that never threaten the system itself. You can argue endlessly about surface-level controversies, while the deeper structures of manipulation remain invisible and unchallenged. The prison gives you the illusion of freedom while ensuring you never escape. The consequence? An entire civilization of people who believe they're informed, but are actually just emotionally activated, who think they're thinking critically, but are actually just defending their tribe, who claim to seek truth, but are actually addicted to the feeling of being right. This is the nightmare Aldous Huxley prophesied. A population that loves its servitude, that defends the very systems making them blind, that attacks anyone trying to wake them up. And the most heartbreaking part? You can see it happening. You can watch in real time as meaningful discourse is replaced by performance, as genuine curiosity is replaced by confirmation bias, as the hunger for wisdom is replaced by the addiction to outrage. And everyone pretends this is normal. This is just how things are. This is the price of progress. But it's not. This is the consequence of building a civilization that profits from keeping you distracted, divided, and emotionally volatile. This is what happens when wisdom becomes unprofitable and ignorance becomes a business model. The cost isn't just individual, it's civilizational. We're creating a world where the wise are marginalized and the loud are crowned, where depth is dismissed and superficiality is celebrated, where the people who could actually solve our problems are drowned out by those who profit from perpetuating them. So here you stand, at the edge of a revelation most people never reach. You see the trap. You understand that your own psychology has been weaponized against you, that the systems you navigate daily are designed to keep you blind, reactive, and profitable. The question that matters now is not whether the trap exists, it's whether you have the courage to escape it. And let me be clear, this isn't about deleting apps or taking a digital detox or any other temporary performance of resistance. This is about something far more radical. This is about reclaiming sovereignty over your own attention, your own thoughts, your own consciousness. This is about choosing to become one of the few who see while the masses remain hypnotized. The first act of rebellion is brutal in its simplicity. Stop reacting. Every time you feel that surge of emotion, that spike of anger, that rush of righteousness, that need to immediately respond, pause. Just for a moment. Recognize that you're being played. That emotional reaction you're feeling, it was engineered. The outrage, the fear, the tribal certainty, these are not your authentic responses. They're conditioned reflexes, carefully cultivated by systems that profit from your predictability. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps, discovered a truth that became the foundation of his entire philosophy. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies your freedom. Most people live their entire lives without ever finding that space. They move through the world on autopilot, reacting to every trigger, defending every belief, never once stepping back to ask, is this really me thinking? Or is this just my conditioning speaking? The second act of rebellion is even more dangerous. Embrace not knowing. In a world obsessed with certainty, with having opinions on everything, with always being on the right side, the admission of ignorance becomes revolutionary. To say, I don't know, is to refuse participation in the false certainty that keeps humanity trapped. It's to acknowledge that reality is vast, complex, and mysterious, and that your current understanding of it is probably inadequate. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. He would remind himself that his perceptions were not reality itself, only interpretations, and often wrong ones. This wasn't weakness. This was intellectual honesty. And it's precisely this honesty that the modern world can't tolerate, because an honest person can't be easily manipulated by false narratives. The third act of rebellion: cultivate silence. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of stillness within yourself. Because wisdom doesn't shout, it whispers. And you'll never hear it over the constant noise of notifications, updates, and engineered crises demanding your attention. The mystics and philosophers throughout history all discovered the same truth. Transformation happens in silence, not in noise. Buddha sat beneath a tree. Jesus withdrew to the desert. Nietzsche wandered mountains alone. These weren't escapes from the world. They were necessary withdrawals to find clarity that the world actively prevents. In your context, this might mean something as simple as walking without your phone, sitting without screens, allowing yourself to be bored without immediately reaching for distraction. This is terrifying for most people. They've forgotten how to be alone with their own consciousness. The fourth act of rebellion: choose your teachers carefully, not the ones the algorithm recommends, not the ones with millions of followers, but the ones who make you uncomfortable, who challenge your assumptions, who demand that you think rather than simply consume. Read the philosophers the world has forgotten. Seek the thinkers who were marginalized in their time because they refused to simplify truth for mass consumption. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "We are condemned to be free," meaning that freedom isn't a gift, it's a burden. It means taking responsibility for your own consciousness, your own beliefs, your own relationship with truth. Most people desperately want to escape this burden. They want authorities to tell them what to think, tribes to tell them who they are, systems to absolve them of the responsibility of being fully awake. But you're reading this because something in you refuses that comfort. Something in you knows that a life of borrowed opinions and manufactured emotions isn't really living, it's sleepwalking. And the cost of waking up is that you can never unsee what you've seen. You become responsible. You become dangerous not to others, but to the systems that require your blindness to function. This is the rebellion. To think when others react. To question when others accept. To pause when others rush. To admit ignorance when others perform certainty. To seek depth when others chase virality. To become sovereign over your own consciousness in a world that profits from your captivity. And now we arrive at the deepest truth, the one that reframes everything you've understood until this moment. The reason wisdom doesn't go viral has nothing to do with failure. It has everything to do with its true nature. Wisdom was never meant to spread like ignorance because wisdom and ignorance operate on fundamentally different frequencies of reality. Ignorance is horizontal. It spreads across surfaces, infecting masses, replicating endlessly without depth. But wisdom is vertical. It descends into the individual soul, transforming one consciousness at a time, moving through dimensions that crowds can never access. Think about what going viral actually means. It means rapid, uncontrolled replication. It means spreading without discrimination, without depth, without transformation of the host. A virus doesn't care about the quality of cells it infects, only the quantity. And this is precisely what ignorance does. It jumps from mind to mind, requiring nothing from its hosts except the capacity to react and transmit. But wisdom cannot be transmitted like data. It cannot be downloaded like information. It cannot go viral because it's not contagious, it's earned. Every person who attains wisdom must walk the path themselves. They must face their own shadows, question their own beliefs, die to their own illusions. No one can do this for them. No viral post can shortcut this journey. The mystic Osho understood this when he said that truth is not something outside to be discovered, but something inside to be realized. And realization, true realization, is always individual. It happens in the silence between thoughts, in the moment when ego dissolves and something deeper emerges, in the dark night of the soul when everything you thought you knew crumbles, and you must rebuild from essence rather than conditioning. This is why every spiritual tradition points to the same pattern. Buddha left his palace and sat in silence. Jesus went to the desert. Muhammad retreated to the cave. Moses climbed the mountain. These weren't publicity stunts. These weren't attempts to go viral. These were necessary withdrawals from the noise of collective consciousness so that individual consciousness could awaken. The great awakenings of history never began in crowds. They began in solitude. One person, stripped of all social validation, all tribal certainty, all comfortable narratives, confronting reality directly. And only after that confrontation, only after the transformation, did they return to share what they discovered. But even then, they weren't trying to convince the masses. They were calling to those who were ready to hear. Here's the paradigm shift that changes everything. Wisdom's invisibility. In the viral landscape isn't a bug. It's a feature. It's the filter. It's how truth protects itself from being diluted, corrupted, or weaponized by those who aren't ready for it. Ignorance spreads easily because it requires nothing from you. But wisdom demands everything. And that demand is what keeps it pure. Consider this. If wisdom could go viral, if profound truth could spread as easily as outrage and fear, what would happen? It would be immediately co-opted by the same systems that profit from ignorance. It would be packaged, commodified, stripped of its transformative power, and sold back to you as another form of entertainment. It would become inspirational quotes that people scroll past without changing. It would become self-help platitudes that soothe without awakening. It would become another product in the attention economy. Wisdom's refusal to go viral is its protection mechanism. It remains hidden not because it's weak, but because it's sacred. It reveals itself only to those who seek it with genuine hunger, those who are willing to pay the price of transformation. And that price is steep. The death of who you thought you were, the surrender of certainties you've clung to, the acceptance of mystery over mastery. This is why Jiddu Krishnamurti said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." The world celebrates conformity to its madness, but wisdom invites you to stand apart not in arrogance or superiority, but in clarity, to see without the filters of ideology, to think without the constraints of tribal loyalty, to love without the conditions of transaction. And here's the final, most powerful revelation. Ignorance doesn't actually rule the world. It rules the surface. It controls the noise, the trends, the viral moments that feel so urgent and then vanish. But beneath that surface, in the depths of reality itself, wisdom governs everything. It's the silent force that has guided every genuine breakthrough in human consciousness. It's the foundation beneath all meaningful art, science, philosophy, and spirituality. The shallow waves of ignorance may roar across the ocean's surface, but they're just temporary disturbances. The depths remain unchanged, eternal, governed by principles that no amount of viral content can alter. Truth doesn't need validation from algorithms. Reality doesn't require likes to exist. Wisdom doesn't need to trend to be powerful. So perhaps the question was never, why doesn't wisdom go viral? Perhaps the real question is, why would you expect it to? Viral things are fast, loud, and fleeting. They capture attention for a moment and then dissolve. But wisdom is slow, quiet, and eternal. It transforms one consciousness at a time, spreads through resonance rather than replication, moves through the depths rather than across surfaces. And here's what this means for you. If you're waiting for wisdom to come to you through your feed, through trending topics, through the same channels that deliver everything else, you'll wait forever. Wisdom doesn't come to the passive consumer. It reveals itself to the active seeker. It appears when you stop scrolling and start sitting in silence, when you stop consuming opinions and start confronting your own consciousness, when you stop following influencers and start following your own curiosity into depths that have no audience. The world may be ruled by ignorance, but only if you define the world as the surface phenomena, the viral moments, the trending controversies, the collective performances. But if you dive deeper, if you cultivate the courage to seek what lies beneath, you discover that wisdom has always been there, patient, eternal, waiting not for the masses, but for you. Because in the end, ignorance rules the many, while wisdom transforms the few. And those few, the ones who refuse to be hypnotized, who insist on seeing clearly, who choose depth over distraction, they become something the viral world can never touch. Truly free. Their consciousness becomes sovereign. Their attention becomes sacred. Their presence becomes transformative. You don't need wisdom to go viral. You need wisdom to go deep into you. One awakened consciousness changes everything it touches. One person who sees clearly can illuminate thousands. Not through viral content, but through lived example. Not through loud proclamation, but through quiet embodiment. Not through forcing others to wake up, but through becoming so awake yourself that others feel drawn to discover what you've found. This is the ultimate truth. Wisdom doesn't need to go viral because it was never meant to. It's not competing in the attention economy. It's operating on an entirely different plane of existence, one where transformation matters more than transmission, where depth matters more than reach, where truth matters more than trends. And once you understand this, once you truly grasp that wisdom's silence is not weakness, but power in its purest form, you're finally free. Free from the need for validation, free from the addiction to virality, free to seek truth for its own sake, regardless of who else is watching. Because when one light is lit in the darkness, it doesn't need to be the brightest or the loudest. It just needs to burn true. And that single flame, small, steady, undeniable, can guide others home.